when we paint, you don't think about the paintbrush as a technology, right? We don't want to think about it because then it kind of, you have to think about it as an extension of your creative expression. And that's where you can actually be truly creative. You don't want to think about, oh my God, it's a canvas, you know? Hi, I'm Stella Lee, and you're listening to Gut Talks, GGUTT.
Hi, I'm Maria, and welcome to GGUTT Talks, where we co-create a collective intelligence involving both people who are not always in the limelight and those who are, in order to learn from each other and spread knowledge, creative and critical thinking in the business world. All I ask is to follow or subscribe to the show and get in touch. It helps me know that there are actually people listening and I'm actually not just shouting into the void. Now let's get started. Dr. Stella Lee has over 20 years of international experience in consulting digital learning initiatives with higher education, government, NGOs, and the private sectors. She's the founder of Paradox Learning, where she offers practical advice and strategy on AI. She's also a speaker, startup advisor, and columnist. We talk about her background and journey, blending design, arts, and computer science, AI literacy and learning, as well as her framework. It's an off-the-cuff conversation, rich in information. A big shout out to Charles-Louis Demer for the intro. Here we go. Thank you, Stella. Really excited to have you on this episode. I would like to thank Charles-Louis live because he put us in touch. I was having a chat with him just before our episode and I just mentioned AI, whatever.
Yeah.
And he just said, you need to talk to Stella. So here we are. I checked obviously all your work and so on, and I'm really pleased to have you on the show because I think it's going to be a fun, engaging discussion. As usual, no script, and we said we're going to have just, go with the flow.
Fun. Exactly.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
shout out to Charles-Louis. Yeah. He's a
Go.
connector.
Yes, exactly. You do so many things. I checked your work and so on. You have a blog. You share your resources. You're an educator and you have a background in design, arts, and computer science. And you work in AI and edtech. Yeah, it's a great mix. I like that. It's, the way things are today is like twisting things, bending things around. So what got you into computer science, AI, and design before that, and arts?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I felt like if they did not separate domains, to me, everything it's interconnected. And I just felt like my interest and my passion and my natural inclination, I think I start drawing before I start writing. And and I think it's human. It's very intuitive of us to start marking, right? Making marks. If you look at kids, we all draw, we all doodles, and it's just something that I happen to do naturally since I was age 3, I think. And it's something. And my dad, he was a very good artist as well, and he was a tremendously creative person. He definitely nurtured that in me. And so I start exploring and start, you know, formalizing my interests by going to art school, by taking art training. But then I was always very curious about technology as well. I really like tinkering. I guess I grew up playing Legos and robots and Transformers and it's also something my dad also was really into that. And I guess his interest kind of passed it on to me. And they are I never make any distinguishment. I never distinguished between, oh, this is a tech and this is art or this is something else. This is craft. To me, it's all integral. It is part of my interest, and it's just the way I see the world. So I started out doing art and design, and then once I start exploring more of that, I start incorporating technology into it. I start playing with computer. I start playing with like, oh, programming can also, allow me to create games. It allows me to create graphics graphics when visual arts start integrated into computing. And then you suddenly have a field in computer art. So from there, it's just kind of, to me, it just comes full circle between art and computer science.
So I'm just going to jump a bit forward here because what you're saying for me makes sense. I get it. The things are interlinked, right? Because you find,
Yeah.
you know, you innovate when you connect things in a way. So you're working with, obviously, you have paradox learning about AI literacy. And I really like the way you put it together, AI
Oh,
literacy.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And what would you say to someone, because it's a hot topic, obviously, with generative AI and so on
Yeah.
right now,
Yes.
to someone who's listening to us and thinking, AI, not interested, it's going to take over my job. It's not, because we hear this all the time. Even
Yeah.
maybe you and I don't, and lots of people in our circle don't, who are in our space, But beyond that, many, many people are scared. That's at least from my experience. So
Agree.
what's your take on this? What do you have to say?
Yes. I think, well, anytime there's a new technology that comes out, I think a lot of the emotions come, it brings a lot of emotions out, right? And the way I've seen and experienced it, and I try to put my ears to the ground. Yeah, you're right. A lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. People are stressed because they might be losing their jobs. So the anxiety also coming from unknown. Like we don't know how things are going to change. How is it going to change us? How is it going to change society? How is it going to change our jobs? And confusion too. I think the conversations out there doesn't help. I think even AI as a term, I mentioned it elsewhere. I really don't like the term artificial intelligence. It's murky. It doesn't really say what it is, and it gives us an unrealistic expectation of what it can do, right? And so I think the reason why I developed my AI literacy framework, and to people listen out there, my take is, I mean, look, this technology's been around for a very long time. Actually, it's been around for 170 years. The past 2 years, because of the development of generative AI and large language model, it really becomes so everyday now, and and we all have access to it. I think the barrier to access this technology has been removed, and it becomes like everyday thing. Like you can't get away from it. Like everywhere you go, your cars, your GPS, your music system, your thermostat, everything. Right? We're all surrounded by it. It's like I would challenge people to find a tool that's not AI enabled or in a process of being AI enabled. So it's already here, and it's more of it. It's coming. So like, what can we do about it? Right? I don't want people to continue to be confused, and that include me. I get anxiety to thinking about it because how are we going to keep up? How are we going to make sense of it all? And how are we going to like coexist, right? How are we going to like leverage it? So we're driving the innovation. It's not the technology driving us. And more importantly, it's not tech firms from a capitalistic society is driving that. We as citizens should drive that. And I think you people like, if I have anything to say, is that I think we need to take control of this technology, and by taking control, meaning we need to understand it, we need to be informed in how we're going to go about using it, how we go about developing it, how we're going to go about implementing, and how we're going to go about critiquing the limitations. So that's my take.
There's lots to unpack actually, because
Oh,
yes,
totally. Okay.
so we know that the technology hasn't been visible or tangible to the general
Yeah.
public for a long time. And as you said, it's in every map, it's in every application we use just on our phone without thinking about anything outside the phone anyway.
Uh, I
So
know.
that it's at the fingertip of everybody with a smartphone, and it's been there. But with generative AI, it's made it accessible, as you said, and tangible. And the fear probably came here even more because some people don't understand it. Some people don't want to understand it. And some people, um, some people don't have access to it also.
Yeah, well, the whole country said have no access
Yeah.
to it, right?
Yeah. So much to unpack here. Let me start with this. The first one is coming from a creative background, I understand the fact that for me as a designer, and you as well, we understand this, is that our life, if you want, is about getting out of our comfort zone anyway, and to do things we don't know,
Yeah.
and understand and create and learn and experiment and so on. But you're teaching, you're into edtech, and you've been in that space for a long time. What's driving people to try to understand AI? Are they forced? Sometimes they are there because they have to be present and then like leave and forget about it? Or like, what are you seeing? What are the patterns? And how has this evolved? I'm going to make it more difficult now. And what do you anticipate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. But what I'm seeing is, yeah, people, a lot of them have no choice but to use it. I think, especially if you're working for an organization and the organization decided to use it, and it's really depending on the pre-existing culture of the organization, the pre-existing leadership style, right? It's not, it's nothing new. I mean, this is like another tool that
True.
perhaps leadership say where you have to use it is a top-down decision and you don't have a choice. Or there are also grassroots movements that I've seen in organizations that individuals or departments are like, hey, this is pretty amazing. It really saves me time. It really improves my workflow. It really helps us brainstorm, collaborate. Why isn't the organization using it? Let's just start experimenting in my department, right? So that's the other spectrum. It's that a person or a department or a group start experimenting in silos, right? It's not endorsed by the company yet, or maybe never, but they just find it so interesting and so useful and they're excited. So they start implementing different things. And because sometimes companies move slowly, um, and sometimes for the right reason and sometimes for the wrong reasons, right? Like sometimes it's very bureaucratic, sometimes they're very they're risk averse, but also like if you're a company trying to implement AI, you have to think it through about privacy and you have to think about the surveillance aspect. You have to think about, consumer data and all and the quality of the data and the policies and all that stuff. So yeah, like it's rightly so. Companies are moving slowly, but then you can see people are just start implementing that at a departmental or regional level. And I think in general, people are positive about it and they wanted to give it a try. They do see some benefits of it, but I think at the same time, it's kind of wary of the limitations or wary of some of the risks involved. And there are many. And so I think people are cautious, but at the same time wanted to embrace it. And I think that might change over time as companies are implementing it across the organization at a wider level. It's same with society and the government start using AI and start putting more guardrails, start putting more policies around it. And that will come, but it's not tomorrow. And I think then, people would hopefully have more confidence and more trust. And that's where innovation would happen. And the technology has to become almost transparent. You almost don't have to think about it's a tag. You have to use it as if it's of course naturally there. It's part of your toolkit. And then innovation can happen. Because when we paint, you don't think about the paintbrush as a technology, right? We don't want to think about it because then it kind of, you have to think about it as an extension of your creative expression. And that's where you can actually be truly creative. You don't want to think about, oh my God, it's a canvas, you know?
Yeah. This leads to what I wanted to ask you. Actually, you touch on the fact that we have to be creative in business and so on, and this adoption, if you want, of generative AI now should not be about generative AI itself, even though at this point in time it might sound as is selling. This is where companies are discovering how they could use it because new use cases will emerge anyway. Um, it's like adopting design in companies, before, lots of companies requested lots of trainings about design thinking and whatever to um, embed this in their workflows and so on. Now it's a little bit less because lots of companies have this now. However, with generative AI, it's constantly evolving, and that's the cool aspect of it. So
design thinking was such a thing a few years ago. Right?
Yeah.
Suddenly every company is talking about design thinking, and I don't hear about it as much now.
Exactly. And talking about it is one thing. Actually using it in a way that's making sense for the company is another. So it's so for sure we know that you're gonna have so much to do even in the coming years, not just now at Paradox Learning. And it's what you're doing is constantly evolving because you have your framework that you slightly mentioned. And it's out there for everyone to use and to I'm gonna be posting all the links anyway. So what made you do this? When did you feel you were ready to have a framework for people to use that you can just share out there?
Oh, I'm never ready. I mean, if I wait for me to be ready, it's not going to happen. I think you just have to get over it because and I keep saying that out there it's evolving. It's not perfect because somebody actually just asked me yesterday, said, "Oh, do you consider this complete?" I'm like, "No." And at this given moment in time, yes. And I've done all I can given the information in the context I am in. Yes, but things are dynamic, things change, and my understanding and my knowledge is also dynamic, and it's no never like there, like I never arrived. But same with technology, right? It's never like, okay, we're done developing AI. It's like asking OpenAI, are you done? Is that the final version of ChatGPT? No. As long as technology is not done, then my framework is not done. I started that because I think about a year ago, in July 2023, I was approached to do an AI workshop for educators in Europe. So along with that, they said, "Oh, can you create like an AI toolkit, like a field guide, if you will, for professors to teach master's level courses?" And so I started putting this together, and I'm, of course, like everybody else, like what is some of the more popular tools? How can we use for education? What are some functions and features? And what's AI? How do we unpack all of that? But then I felt like it's still missing something. Like I was lacking a cohesive framework to put things together. To say, not just focusing on like how do you write prompts, but like what does it mean by building this foundational understanding of AI? And it got me thinking, well, when when the internet came about, there was a lot of talk on digital literacy or technology literacy, and I taught that actually at university when that was a thing. And then when social media came out and became mainstream, there was social media literacy, which I also helped develop at university. And so I gone through several iterations of different literacies. And again, when big data, cloud computing became a thing, there was a lot of work on data literacy. And this is, to me, it's a natural continuation of that essence. And of course, it started from Aristotle about literacy, right? If you want to really trace it back about what's basic literacy, what does that mean? And building from there, I just wanted to have a framework that encompassed all of that, but it also is flexible enough that it doesn't get locked into just one method of thinking. My idea, my thought process was such that we need to define AI literacy. What does it mean? How many areas do we need to encompass? But then practically, how do we assess that? Like what are the competencies associated with each of the areas? And how do you measure it, right? If you want to use it as a self-reflection tool to say, like, am I AI literate? Where am I? It is not yes or no. It's a spectrum, right? It's a continuum of learning. And so that's just an instrument for me to use for assessment, for self-reflection, for upskilling. And it's just how giving some sort of framework for people to start talking about and building that.
So, how are you gathering feedback to go through rounds of iteration? And you talked about
Yeah.
measurements as well. How
Yeah.
do you do that?
Well, many different ways. I post on LinkedIn. First of all, I share that and give it away for everybody to use. And people just start organically, come back. These things takes time, right? So I put it out there. People were excited about it, and then I start hearing people say, "Oh, I use it when we're doing a strategy with the schools, when we're doing a strategy with the organization, and just give us like a way to frame the strategy." And so I got feedbacks through just my peer network in learning. And so I kind of still lived in both worlds. I lived in the academic world still, and I lived in the practitioner world, the professional practice and the consulting and all of that. Allow me to gather inputs from peers, but also with organizations that I consult with. They often come to me because they see my free work, they find it useful, and they start using it, and they want a little bit of help. So they come to me. So I gather use cases with that. And the organization that engaged me to create a framework to start with, it's Energy, and it's also based in Europe. They're a renewable energy company in Holland. And so they are using it internally. So I also speak to them periodically to just say, hey, where are you guys at with that? And also, I'm currently building a course based on my framework, an online self-paced course with International University, which is a university here in Canada. It's an open university. And so we are planning to launch it later on this autumn. And we would have a feedback mechanism to, once people got through the course, to gather feedback there too.
And then you will be able to gather feedback and keep measuring. I guess that's the tough
Absolutely.
part.
Yeah, I
What
think
do you measure?
well, I mean, depending on like the goals, right? But to me, first of all, it's like, well, how many people actually interacted with this material? Right? How many people actually use it? So just from even the engagement perspective, like just very basics. Do people actually use it? Do people actually find it useful? So it's to me, I always mix my measurement. I always measure quantitatively and qualitatively. I do a lot of like, kind of one-on-one feedback sessions. Like again, reach out to my network, reach out to people that already spoken to me a few months ago. So I do a lot of kind of interview, kind of semi-structured interview feedback sessions. I also measure like because I already have a framework, I have the competencies spell out. So I can actually measure it based, using my competencies. Like level one, the basics. If you just have awareness about AI, but you don't really know about how, all the various aspects, I would use the competencies to say, well, can you list, what are some of the most commonly used AI techniques now? I'd be able to define the mostly commonly used terms of AI, which is one of the competencies I listed, right? And again, with data fluency, one of the competencies, like, did you know where the data came from? Like the training data. What is the training data, first of all? Can you explain that? That is a way of measuring it. Like you can measure that by giving out simple assessments. You can measure that by having conversation with people afterward. You can measure it also with managers and supervisors in the field working with the workers who had gone through this kind of training. So I think it makes it very easy for me because I already have the competencies in my hand. And then never mind if you're putting it in a platform like a learning management system, it has all sorts of data too, right? Do people click on things? Do they spend time on this resource? Do they download it? You know, uh, do they leave any feedback? Do they engage in some sort of discussions? You can also measure the sentiment with sentiment analysis tool. So like if you would put like when we put this framework into a system, we get all the data from a system as well. So
So you're big in like on the L&D front, like learning and development,
yeah, yeah,
if you want departments.
yeah.
Are you able to do that within B2B contexts as well.
In terms of
Uh,
literacy,
yeah, and feedback loops and measurements as well. Because it's
yeah,
a bit
like
more challenging there,
oh,
right? So I'm
for
just
sure,
asking
for
you.
sure. I think it depends, depending on the pre-existing relationships and the setup. Like just sometimes with clients, they already have that kind of B2B relationship, and it's easier because they can, reach out and say, hey, my goal is to measure this at the end. Could you, make sure that we work this out? Like measurement needs to be thought through at the beginning, right? You need to mention that. You need to have a plan and not as like an afterthought. Like it happens so often. You provide an intervention and you're like, oh, what better measure impact? I'm like, well, we need to think about this at the beginning. S- So
Yeah.
so then I think it depending on like if the B2B already have that set up, already have that relationship, that is easier. And then you have to pick your battles. It doesn't always happen, right? Some companies, and I'm a consultant, I'm not an employee. So I can only recommend best practices. I can force them to use that. And so if they say no, we don't care, even though, I think it's a good idea, but I can only say, this is what I recommend. This is the instrument I provide. And if you think and sometimes like that is the end of my consulting, right? Because sometimes they're like, oh no, we just take it and we can run with it. We don't need you to come back. So it depending on the consulting process, sometimes I just go in at the beginning and I never see the end results. And so sometimes I really don't know. When
Yeah.
I can, I usually mention assessment and measurement at the beginning. I put it in there just so that they know.
Yeah,
It's an
that's
it's an educational process.
yes, yes, yes. Good, correct. And have you had anyone just walk out of the room while you were, you know, delivering like sessions on AI literacy or data literacy or so?
Well, luckily, no, so far. I
Have you kicked
I
out anyone?
Um, also luckily, no. I think a lot of times when I'm asked to do something, they already get the buy-ins, right? Again, because I'm usually asked to do something as an external person, the saying a consultant is somebody that's 50 miles away from you. So like they have to bring me in. So they invested and I think that that give it some weight instead of having an internal person. That person you can talk to any time of the day. Maybe that is, maybe they take it less seriously. But no, luckily, like honestly, so far I've had really good conversations. At most, people don't pay attention at times. And it could be, it's sometimes difficult to sustain attention for a long period of time. So I'm also aware of that. I always like if I'm doing a face-to-face session, if it's like a workshop, I take breaks. I built in a lot of interactivities. And honestly, a lot of time when people come for workshops, they want to talk to each other. So I give them a lot of time so they can talk.
Yeah, I
And
guess
they
that's the nice thing when people can have constructive conversations and discover something along the way uh, because of you. So they will also remember like this happened during this session.
Yeah,
So
I think it's with big organizations, sometimes people don't talk to each other, right? Like they work, side by side, but they may
yeah,
not they may not discover that they're doing the same thing or they're sharing, like they could share stuff. And even an external workshop, then my goal is to bring in that diversity of conversation, right? Like if you're in finance, you might not ever talk to people in manufacturing. If you're in arts, you might never talk to people in tech. And as you know, in startup world, they really trying to get people to wear many hats. And I think
yeah,
that actually help with innovation when you have that kind of conversation across different functional teams and across different industries to say, oh, wow, you're using facial recognition this way. I haven't thought about that in my industry, or this is coming to me now. So, any advice you have? What are some things that I need to be aware of? And I think those conversations, like I'm just facilitating them. I don't necessarily have to have all and I don't have all the answers, but it's when I think the magic happens is when people start sharing and start collaborating.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree because that's the key thing, right? It can solve everything. So,
It's like if
no,
people walk out, hey, that's on down. I'm trying not to take it seriously. I mean, you don't know what goes on in people's lives, so and maybe they have legitimate reasons. And
yeah, especially for like internal sessions for like B2B organizations.
yeah,
Sometimes the internal communication um, can convey something that is not what you're actually gonna do.
mm.
So the expectation is so different, and then you might just have people who don't want to be there.
And
So
I think though, if people are walking out or disengaged, it also says something about the culture of the company. Like when you say
yeah,
that this communication and expectation management,
yeah.
like maybe it's a reflection of the company. Like, and that's not something I can control.
Mm-mm. No, you can't control obviously,
I mean,
and
I can give feedback.
yeah, yeah, but you can control, of course. And the most important thing, just for people who are listening, is not to take this personally. It's just the way it is. It's not.
Yeah, like if it happens to you, it happens to anybody that's giving a talk or a workshop and people walked out or fall asleep or anything else. I mean, I had that happen at university with students.
I think that's a different level. Like, yeah, that's different.
I had a student fall asleep in my class and I just gently like kind of poke her and say, hey, do you want some coffee? Maybe you want to get some fresh air. And I think we are human. Like we had off days, and it's totally okay. I mean, as long as they don't make a scene, as long as they're not disruptive, they're not aggressive, I'm fine with it. And you have to remember that too. Like it could easily happen to you I mean, if I have a cold and I took, if I were to take cold medication, like, who knows?
Yeah, yeah. And anyway, if we think about ourselves, even if we're at a conference or something, we will end up looking at our phone at some point. So even if you're in a classroom, people will do it. And I also don't say anything, but sometimes when I need them to focus, I just say, listen to that or look at this. Let's talk about this. And then you can like finish off after because especially if you're there for like 3-4 hours. And I never do like
This is tough.
talk for 3-4 hours. There are always activities. They
Yeah.
do stuff because otherwise we will both shoot ourselves, right?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of like an all day workshop either.
Or lectures. It's just
Yeah.
too much. It's just too long. But yeah, I think we went into this quite a bit because there's lots of demand for trainings about AI in general. I mean, I had a call yesterday with a guy. So he wants to know more about AI to teach
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest way to learn is to teach also. I mean, it's because
That's
we're
true.
forced to do something with a specific timeline, right?
Right. That's true.
But
And then you're forced to make sure everything you say is correct, right? You have to do more research and you have to double check and confirm. And with the topic that's changing so quickly.
yeah. And with like this person, for example, is just aware that things will change very
Yeah.
fast and wants to catch up. So there are all kinds of people, and it's also difficult to recommend like where to go for because what do you want, right? So
I think, yeah, exactly. I think starting with defining the goals. What are you trying to do with that? What do you want to, where do you want to go with that? But you're right. It's even like for me, I'm, a- it's overwhelming. Every post on LinkedIn, every news article, every tool, it's AI. So when we get to the point, it's. I mean, you want to know about my prediction? I felt like we're going to reach a saturation point whereby there will be pushbacks. So I
well,
think
you
people are
said
gonna
the
start
metaverse.
saying, yeah, exactly. If people are gonna be like, I'm sick of it. Like I'm already sick of it by seeing all the AI generated images out there. So I start sketching. I start going back to my roots of drawing. And it actually prompted me to draw more now than I was last year. So I think it's going to be pushbacks. I think it's going to be interesting to see what's happening the next year and how, like, what does that mean? How is it going to manifest? Um,
So you think there's a bubble?
I think there's going to be, I don't know if it's a bubble, but I really think people are going to start saying, well, they're going to be more discerning consumers. They're going to be more discerning information, about information that's being pushed to them. I am like I'm not going to look at every single AI post. I'm not going to look at every person who talks about AI. It's just, if it's not quality, and it's not just the quality, but it has to apply to me, right? It has to connect to my world. It has to be something that I can that is useful, because I don't have time. It's too much. I can't process. And I see that in others as well. So I think the quality would get better too, the information that's out there. Remember when desktop publishing first came out? And suddenly there's a lot of graphic design stuff floating around. And then the best of price sunk to the bottom. And then people start recognizing, they start getting better at, like, picking out the good poster from the bad brochure kind of thing. And I think that's happening, and that's gonna happen.
But I agree with you because what we're seeing a lot is just compilations of tools and tools and tools, and we know that most of them are gonna die anyway, so there's no point in,
Exactly.
going
Exactly.
into that. So I think TechCrunch released the 100 AI startups that
Yeah.
raised lots
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
investment in the US or
Yeah.
something like that. But let's see how many will survive and make it. Because,
Wow.
yeah,
Exactly. Holland IQ also has good analysis, and they keep track of AI companies as well as another resource. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, 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 no. That's good. That's good to know and share. The only thing is, I get you with all the AI posts because it's like a couple of years ago, or like more than that during COVID, we had all the NFT posts and everyone was a Web3 slash blockchain slash
Oh, I know.
metaverse slash crypto expert. We have
Well,
all this on AI. My interesting angle on AI and all that is just the approach and just understanding the mindset and the approach in doing
yeah,
things in a different way. That's interesting, but not all the tools and like the best ways to prompt or whatever, because it's just becoming too much to the point where to me it's becoming junk.
agree,
Every day there's
100%.
something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm 100% with you. I'm also, of course, interested in that, and how we're gonna, like use them most effectively. And how is it gonna serve us, right? And how is it enhancing my ability and our collective abilities? How is it gonna help me to be more creative? How is it gonna help me to do my work better? But also, like, understanding what is it not good at? Like, what is some problems that I need to watch out for? Because those are not always obvious. And you need to really you really need to train yourself in understanding some of the problems. Even, I mean, even take hallucination. It's getting so subtle now. It's so convincing. And if you're tired, you don't pay attention, like, you would very easily buy into the AI outputs. And that's where the danger is. And that's why we have to be more careful, as the tools are getting better, as the hallucination and all the misinformation is more settled.
Yeah, the curation process is gonna be the one
Yeah.
made by humans, I guess. Anyway, but that's the thing here. Because you're teaching and you're in the academic world and
Yeah.
in the corporate world and the startup world. I had this conversation also with one of my mentors.
Yeah.
I was teaching, and she's very hands on in that sense.
Yeah.
She influenced, if you want, the way I teach as well somehow.
Yeah.
And I think we were lucky that we were doing things by hand. You say you were drawing, like you had to start again. And that's how
Yeah.
you don't forget and you remember and you
Yeah.
practice and you understand why you're doing what you're doing. It's like learning by doing while thinking in a way, if that makes sense.
Oh,
But
yeah.
now with AI, even my students now, it's everything's on ChatGPT, like literally. I mean, I have someone today on LinkedIn. It was like it had GPT message to like say how amazing I am and stuff like that. It's like it's it's just like for me. It's like, how do I respond to this without being rude? You know?
With that post.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll send it
Sure.
to you.
I think it concerns me that the focus is just on ChatGPT too, not even about all the large language models.
It is, yeah. It is. I know they were using ChatGPT,
Yeah.
even in class. But the thing is, how could they curate if they can't think and make decisions that make sense? You know.
So, and to add to that, first of all, I like to encourage people to say, well, compare their outputs across 2 or 3 different, you know, chatbots, right? It's because it's very interesting to see how they generate content differently. Um, but the thing that I keep thinking, right, is with Gen AI models, we're really striving to be average. It's
I like that.
terribly, yeah, we're striving to be average. It's not terribly bad. It's not terribly good. It's because it's the statistical model that makes prediction of the most likely outcome. So the most likely, if you look at the bell curve, it's all in the middle, right? It's the most likely one. So, but the really good things are on the right side of the bell curve. You know what I mean? And these language models are going to curate them because they're the 10% or the 5%. And so it's not the most likely responses, but those are the best ones, right? And then you don't get the terrible ones to the left of the bell curve because they also less, statistically less likely to be curated. So we actually just collectively becoming more average.
We are collectively becoming more average. I mean, this might be the podcast title. I love it. This is brilliant. It's no, it makes sense because
Well, it is. Yeah.
but
I'm sorry.
no, they're not there just yet. So this is just the beginning. I mean, listening to Sam Altman, he said that Chat GPT 4.0 is crap. In a way, I'm paraphrasing here, right?
Yeah.
5 is gonna be like the thing, but and then we still have to type and to be very articulate in the way we say things because this, I'm gonna call it monster in a nice way.
Yeah.
It does not know us enough. I mean, no matter how custom or how much we customize them, there's so much. I mean, human beings are complex individuals. So, um, where are we heading to with this? How better can they get? Or how worse can they get? I don't know.
Average.
Okay, you still stand by the average.
Well, I mean, currently, as it stands, I think there's a study that say, well, it depends on the study, but there's one study that says estimate 12% of the internet content is now generated by AI. So the 12% today, right? So think about a year from now, it'll be more content generated by AI, which is recycling the same thing.
Yeah.
If that's the case. I mean, what gives me hope is there's also a movement towards small language models. So instead of like large language model whereby you scrape the internet, you are scraping your personal data, you're scraping very domain specific data. So perhaps it's going towards more small language models instead of large language models, because it's just going to be the average of that. And if I don't know, if you use Reddit, for example, that's not the best quality writing that you can get. And there's a lot of biases, there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of false information there. It's great. All of that. Can you just imagine like what it's like? It's like making, I don't know what's the best analogy. It's like making a pot of soup and you put everything in there. And you're not going to get the best flavor, right? You're not going to get all the good stuff coming out. You're just going to average it into like brown soup. Right?
Yeah,
So I
no,
don't know if it's going to get better unless we're going to start again and clean it again. I know there's a lot of human oversight behind ChatGPT and other language models. I don't know if we're fast enough to catch it up with other, really less than quality content out there. Maybe they have a secret sauce in OpenAI that I don't know. I mean, I'm keeping an open mind, but I just think it's still very, very average, and it's just each iteration of OpenAI ChatGPT doesn't seem to be better.
so can it be
It
controlled? I think I listened to Mark Cuban. He said it can't be controlled,
it
which
can or
makes sense.
cannot.
Yeah, because it's just recycling content, as you're recycling
Yeah.
data, and whatever you put out there, you can say, Maria's the best dancer in the world, right? And then if there's lots of it, like, how do we trust?
I
Um,
mean, this is the problem when you're developing technology with the capitalistic model. They're not open. I can't audit, anybody can. So I don't know what the process is like. Maybe they're very good at garbage cleaning behind the scenes, in which case then it could potentially get better. But then what's the criteria? Who's making decisions behind that? And who's determining what's garbage? What isn't? I don't know that. Maybe what you consider garbage, it's my treasure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this makes sense. A couple of years ago, I had some stuff in mind around design and so on, and I was wondering, how can we create, like, let's say, a large language model, or use, if you want, large language models to verify data information and attribute the data and the source of it, to build, if you want, a brain that makes sense, that's not providing rubbish, that is not fed rubbish, and that does not take rubbish for an answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I don't know how. I mean, without human oversight, without human effort, and it's a huge undertaking. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not expecting an answer. I'm just like, having
oh
a
no, it's a
response.
very interesting idea. It's, I mean, but I hate to know how much that's gonna cost us. Like
Yeah.
once it's out there, like how expensive is this thing gonna be? Like if that's so much um human oversight involved, and how much of that is human exploitation as well? As you know, all the labeling of data, they were using human in Kenya, paying them what, $1 an hour? Like, is that even how we wanted to live in a world of inequality? Did you want technology to perpetuate that kind of scenarios? I mean, I don't know. At what cost?
So this leads us to something that you're interested in. I took notes as you were talking. So you said we have unrealistic expectations
Yeah.
with it, and this is something we kind of touched on. But you also have the ethical implications and the responsible implications in all that, and you're interested in the whole societal perspective, the whole interactions, relationships, and so on. So
Yeah.
what's your, I would say, research on this, or what's your interest in that?
Um, well, so in my framework, the last key area is called future work. So I put it there because why a lot of the excitement is about what's happening now. I think we should keep one eye into the future about employability, about upskilling, about not just about like what's the future's going to be like, but also like what do we want it to be, and to keep that perspective of in light of the development of AI now. We're seeing it going one direction while we actually want it to go another direction. Like, is it heading towards widening inequality in society? Are we heading towards worsening the climate change? Are we depleting resources in the world? Right. So the future of work is really kind of my way of saying, hey, don't forget to think about how is this technology shaping our future? And do we want it like that? Or do we have a say? And if we do, like, how do we gonna frame that? How are we gonna have a conversation? What kind of policy should we push for? In a democratic society, one would hope that we have a say. One would hope that we can collectively engage in this kind of conversation. We would hope that we can collectively um, create something together. So my interest, my research, my writing, my teaching has all been around, well, let's look at this with eyes wide open and understand what's currently it's doing, but also think about in the not so distant future, what things that how is it gonna change and how we're gonna make sure that it's the change we want.
So you said future of work specifically,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is extremely interesting. Obviously, I think we touched on it before, right? People don't communicate. That's one of the things. They don't talk to each other or anything. So you're doing more than just teaching them about AI literacy and so on in the way you're doing things. Why is it only future of work? Would you have one on the future of societies, the future of relationships?
I mean, I could, but this initially the framework was created for educators, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So my thinking was that so much of what we teach, for example, at university, don't connect students to work, don't connect students to work skills, employability, all of that. And I think, yeah, AI, it's impacting everything. It could be another framework. I have to kind of limit myself in, okay, this is a framework for educators and L&D to start having this conversation, to start putting some plans together to take action. While, yes, there's also the future of mental health, there's the future of human emotions. I first of all, I don't think I have the domain expertise to address all of that. And, and I also think that it might evolve into a much wider framework than and it potentially could be not as useful because then it's just too much. I'm open to, like, if anybody out there want to take that on and like evolve it into something else, like go for it.
there
I
we go.
personally don't have the domain expertise, or do I think, or I am aware of the fact that it might get too big, that it might not be useful to then apply it. But
Yeah.
yeah, these are good points. I think hopefully by thinking about the future of work, people will start kind of folding in other dimensions that impact them and start thinking about and doing something about it as well.
Yeah, I just think the way the way we worked also or we work today is can be different to different people. It's all connected.
Yeah.
The way we live. That's why I'm asking this question in
Yeah.
that sense. Um, so how do you start teaching those people? Because you have this framework and then the future of work, which could be like, wow, what's that? It's a trendy topic. It's a trendy topic, obviously, and especially,
Yeah.
got trendy a couple of years ago.
And that's what I try to capture that because I think people are already like read about it and it's something they understood and
Mhm.
but perhaps not in light of everything else. I don't know how I would teach it because I don't think it's my responsibility to teach the world. That's what I'm creating this framework so that people can teach each other or teach other people. It's it's a starting point. I think I'm hoping, like, for example, a lot of educational institutions are putting together like activities and exercise for ethical AI practices. So I try to reference them. I try to connect with other peer groups. This, by the way, there's so many of them out there. I really like what's happening in the academic space in higher education. A lot of the academic technology developers and professors, they really came together and say, wow, we need to have a peer network. And we need to put our collective brains together to come up with activities and come up with guidelines, come up with syllabus that address this issue. Like we can just ignore it. So I've seen so many really interesting books and ebooks and booklets and documents about here's 100 activities on AI. Here's 100 activities talking about ethics. Here's the use cases. And so I am really just trying to use all of them and say, here's a resource on that. Here's a resource on that. So I'm slowly collecting them and kind of share them to my network. And that's the way I guess, teach, if you will. It's just, again, more of a curation and facilitation.
Yeah. So I have a few questions here actually. So was there a situation where you had something so challenging, or a certain situation that was so challenging, and then you managed to navigate it? Let's talk about the couple, like last couple of years. If this helps, maybe in the context of employability, because I know that this is something interesting for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about so challenging, but I felt like now everything is so challenging because we we don't have all the answers. Nothing is black and white. I think the challenging thing really is about working with companies in terms of strategy, like in terms of AI strategy, especially with like academic institutions, because just so many moving pieces. The challenging thing is like they have to think about it from almost three different pillars. One is like internally as a business of an organization, of an educational institution as a business, what they can use AI for, right? So so then have to think about that. And then they also have to think about like in terms of the teachers, in terms of like what should we do with faculty development? What can we tell them? How can we give them support and in light of AI? And that they have to think about the students. They have to think about like what are we gonna do? Like once the teachers, once the faculty gets it and on board with using AI, teaching with AI or putting some guidelines around that, then what are we going to do with the students? How are we going to make sure that they are AI literate? How do we make sure the students are still employable in, I don't know, 2 years' time, 4 years' time, when they graduate? It might be a different world. Like, are we doing them justice by teaching what we teach? Are we preparing them sufficiently? So I think it's so challenging as in, like, any of these educational institutions, they have to think about those three areas and instead of maybe one or two, like there's so many big pieces and there's and they're interdependent as well. So you can't think of them in isolation. So that's some of the projects I've been working on. It's challenging, but it's also like, wow, like the impact could be massive. So
It's
it's exciting at the same time.
Yeah, and to add to the mix that the students always come and go. It's not like a
Right.
turnover of employees. It's like the whole batch leaves, the whole, and then a new one comes.
And it's really difficult to measure, right? Because like sometimes they don't come back and give you the data. Like, how did you know?
Yeah, yeah. And so maybe piece of advice that you were given, that you would like to share with everyone.
Oh, uh, I think in light of everything we talk about in today's world, the thing I try to keep in mind is I'm prepared to be wrong. What I say today, it might not be true next week because you know things change. Assumptions I made today might not be the same assumptions tomorrow. And I think it's good to revisit. And it's also to put a qualifier to say, hey, that's what I say today, given the context and the information I know today. And it could be lost by a change in tech, by a change in politics, by a change in economic situations. So I think maybe not to look at things in an absolute way. Um, That's my take. Like what I was saying about we are being collectively average. Hey, that could completely be wrong. Like next week when OpenAI announces some amazing stuff, and I'll be like, okay, you know what? It's okay. I'm not taking what I say back, but it was what I saw at the time correct, or at the time that was my opinion. And it's okay for me to say I've changed my view on that because now I've got new information. And then, don't be so hard on yourself. And also, like, we all feeling anxiety, we all feeling stress. It's normal human emotion. We've gone through so much collectively. Like, we just came out from the pandemic, and then it's like AI and two wars are happening, major wars in the world, and like climate change. It's a lot to take on. So, I think if anything else, like, I hope the conversation about AI actually make us think about humanity. I think it's a humanity issue. It's not about tech. So
Yeah.
that's my take.
I think your take makes sense because that takes guts to say that and share it. And so talking about guts actually and gut talks. What's your relationship with your gut? Because you mentioned a lot intuition and so on. Is it something you follow in general in life and at work?
No, actually, not at all. It's something I have to learn to listen to because, my training in computer science and in academic world, you have to be logical, you have to be scientific, you have to see evidence. And what's gut feeling? I can't see it. I can't grasp it. There's no evidence. It's very difficult to put it out there. But I also learned from good mentors and peers about balancing your intuition and also be evidence based. I've learned that they're not mutually exclusive. I try to incorporate as much as I can, and I often regret it when I don't listen to my guts. So perhaps it's evidence day after all.
So, last one here. I'd like to know what is it that got you into artificial intelligence, even if you don't like the word or the term itself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're into analytics as well, data,
Yeah.
and obviously you did your PhD in computer science.
Yeah. When I was doing my research, actually, we were researching expert systems and recommender systems, and they were basically AI at the time. And we just don't call it AI, right? It's like the group next to me was researching computer visioning. It's also part of AI, but we just didn't call it that at the time. And so it's just a natural evolution that now personalized adaptive recommender systems, it's called AI. Predictive analytics is called AI. Computer visioning is called AI. Robotic it has AI components to it. Natural language processing is also AI. And so it's just it became that's why I don't like the term because they were kind of different disciplines. And now it's all under the umbrella term and people don't know the difference. And so to me, it's not that I really now got into AI. It was something it was part of my study and it just evolved into AI nowadays. And it's still part of it's a branch of computer science. I am fascinated by computers and robotics, and I just continue to explore and try to learn as much as I can. So,
And is there anything else we didn't touch on that you would like to talk about?
what's your gut feeling about AI?
Well, listen to I started a series called Unfiltered
Uh-huh.
a few months ago, I would say.
Like
Um,
today.
I've got
Yeah.
talks Unfiltered series where I
Yeah.
talk on my own. That was a bit the tough one to achieve,
Ah,
but shout out to Gianluca Brignoli, who's the one who told me I should do something like that.
I
He
like
came
that.
twice on the show, and this is where I call it like curious and fascinating, the discovery of it all, and it's also evolving. So I don't have the technical background, if you want, but I look at it from a creative and strategic perspective in that sense. But I love technology by default, and I was exposed to AI projects with different startups also, less in the corporate world, that had AI, not generative AI. And
Yeah.
that was fascinating for me. And you know what? A few years ago, about 4 years ago, I did a very short video when the YouTube shorts were like a thing. And I said like, artificial intelligence is not intelligent. It's artificial. And like, I felt like an idiot doing this kind of, few seconds video, but it's artificial, but there's also a collective kind of intelligence that can produce crap. We know that, but it can
Yeah.
help us
Yeah.
with lots of ideas, bending ideas, understanding or exploring different realities, different scenarios, things that we didn't think about. So I think this is the part that's enjoyable beyond what we call, the thought leader and the assistant and whatever. But I use it pretty much in everything, even and you know why I like to use it is also so I can learn, so I can be ready for the upcoming tweaks also.
Yeah, no, agree. And I love that when you mentioned like it's artificial intelligence. Like I think we need to focus more on the artificial part of it and less on the intelligence part of it. When you think about what other things are artificial, it's not quite the real deal. So I think we should focusing on the limitations on the artificial part of it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's exciting, that's for damn sure. I mean, let's see. And I don't like to fall into the buzz, but
Yeah,
sometimes jumping on
yeah,
the
same,
buzzword can help,
same.
right? And
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting all your links in the description. I think people can find you on LinkedIn
Yeah.
and on Paradox Learning, obviously. And yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.